and we've got a brilliant webinar today. It's about media and understanding, how to engage with the media. I know some of you have done that already. Some of you are really old hands at, for Adult Ed Week, going out there and talking to legislators and getting things in your local paper. But today's webinar will cover a lot. We'll go a little deeper on that. And Selena and Marianne from Full Capacity Marketing are on the line. They're going to take us through some of the stuff that maybe we weren't aware of and some of the tips and stuff that you can put in your toolkit. And so this is something we've never really talked about at the state level or with everybody, on the line as far as a webinar. So I'm really excited for today's webinar. It's something that we sorely needed. Some people do it well, some people have no idea. So we're hoping to get a good foundation from today's webinar. And let me bring in Selena and Marianne.
Okay, Neil. Hi, everyone. It's Selena Shands. Neil, thank you so much for that introduction and, of course, for your ongoing support of the project. Marianne and I are super excited about today's webinar. We've done some previous webinars in the past. We're sort of working through how to do effective outreach for the campaign for all of our target audiences. So we've tackled how to develop an outreach plan in general for your adult learners. We covered business engagement last week with Business U, and today we're talking about the news media. And all of these target audiences are so important for our proactive outreach efforts. I wanted to start with some fun and let you know that our campaign is going to launch on Monday at this web address. In fact, we're trying to get the site live today to sort of do a soft launch and work on it over the weekend. So if you do happen upon it, there may be a few bugs here and there. But we're super excited that the first phase of the website is going to be launching. So we'll actually have a website to push target audiences to about the campaign, which is really to just raise awareness about all of the great work all of the 71 regional consortia are doing across the state and the innovations and the success stories taking place. We don't really do sometimes a great job of letting everyone know that we're here and that we do a fantastic work in terms of working with our adult learners and all of our other target audiences in the community. So today, in tackling the news media, Marianne and I are going to cover these topics today. And again, the PowerPoint and the toolkit that we have developed, you can certainly download that and follow along. So we're going to talk about how to understand your local media landscape and how do you identify the right contact because sometimes there are many, of course, within a certain outlet. So how do you know who to contact? And then different pitch methods. Pitching is a term that we use in the private sector, but the news media is used to being pitched to, meaning we want to share with them a great story so we can get coverage. And of course, with that, we have to talk about what is a great story. What are the components of developing a good story that's newsworthy that reporters would pick up? We'll also talk about how to leverage the Educate and Elevate California campaign, and we've developed some tools and strategies off of the website that you can certainly take advantage of. So Veronica, let's go ahead and bring up the first poll, and this will just give us a sense of who is kind of in the audience as a participant. Just let us know if you do, think you have a system in place to conduct proactive outreach to the news media, or if you don't, or if you're not sure. Just check one of those boxes so we can get a sense of if you do or do not, that'll give us some ideas on how we need to proceed with the materials here. There obviously is a lot in terms of working with the news media, which you'll see today. You're going to have to develop the right story, get it to the right person through the right medium. And, the news media, just like any other target audience, is one that we have to build relationships with. So Marianne just put in a chat there that you can expand on your poll answer by posting here in the chat. Okay, so it looks like about half and half. Let's go ahead and bring up the next poll, Veronica. About half of you do have systems in place, half of you don't. So then the half of you that do, or yeah, even the ones that don't, how many news media stories have been garnered by your organization just in general in the last 12 months? This will give us an idea of kind of the effort putting forth from your organization. And it takes a lot of effort. You know, it's not just you know, have a story and you put it out there and things will get picked up. A lot of the times it really takes some effort to do this. And again, it's looking like about half of you have about 1 to 4 stories in the last 12 months, and the other half are not sure. Okay, great. You can clear the poll there. Thanks so much, Veronica. So we've gone through the 2 polls. That gives us a little bit of sense of who's in the room today so we can tailor the information. This just reiterates that working with the news media it's like any other relationship that you're going to build. And we talked about employers last week, and that's also a challenging audience to work with, as is the news media. And there are a lot of reasons as to why. And I'd like to get into that right now, sort of about the psyche of working with people in the news media. There are a couple things that we have to know when we're working with them. One is that they are on deadline. They are, and that's an important thing that you want to ask, especially a reporter, if they're calling you proactively or your organization for some information for a story. The thing to ask is, when is your deadline? Because they have to file the story oftentimes, and it's a missed opportunity if we don't get back to them quickly. They also juggle many, many things. They need to know the 5 whys, or 5 W's, which we call who, what, when, where, and why. We'll go over those again, especially why. Why is the story so important? Why is it newsworthy, and how? And remember that they are your customers. So if you're proactively pitching them, you sort of have to do your homework. You have to know the data points, which we're going to give you some today. That'll help your pitch efforts. You're going to have to help them connect the dots, meaning, why is this story relevant as to what is going on in your local community or even statewide? And again, that goes back to data points. So you have to think about it as an adult educator. You solve many issues in the community, and there are data points that show the need for adult education, why it's important. So when you're pitching them, you have to sort of build that business case of support, if you will, in terms of why the story is relevant, and value their time. Now, the little link in your PowerPoint is a great article that I think everybody should read. It's an older article, but this was sent by Misty Montano. She's an assignment news desk. She's on the assignment news desk in Colorado, I believe is her place. But I just read you excerpts of this, and the title is Goodbye Press Release. I didn't even open it. She said, your hard work on that press release just went bye-bye with the click of the delete button. You know what the saddest thing is? I don't even know what I deleted. There was no information other than your name and contact information in the body of the email. You expected me to open an attachment to find out what you're pitching. I don't have time to open an attachment. Delete. And then she goes on to say, I'm not making this up. Earlier this morning during a rush on the news desk, I deleted 4 of these emails. They didn't even have a subject line that helped me to understand. And she says, I say it again and again that we receive hundreds of emails every day. And she said, in order for you to really again, streamline, this is how busy they are, is when you're sending an email, she likes to scan it to say who is sending the email subject, and the content should be in the body of the email. So in seconds, she says, I have to make a decision to file the email or delete it. If you make me search for important information, and here are the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, and how, I will delete it. So it's really an eye-opening article, and all of you guys should read it because it helps you gain appreciation of kind of their psyche. And the bottom line is that they're on deadline. They're really juggling multiple tasks. And so it's up to us to really, move forward and help connect the dots as to why it's important with the communication. Now that we've talked about their psyche, let's talk about who and building a list. And so in your PowerPoint, I've given you several links for newspaper, radio, TV, online news, and then, of course, I'll get into the options in just a second. I'm going to go here and share my screen, so just bear with me for a moment while I pull up some of these sites so that you can see. Okay. All right. So here's one now, and this is a link that is in your package there, and this is for the newspapers. So I can go into California, and you can see here that it provides me a whole list in alphabetical order on the different areas. Now, what are all these little buttons here? A, you can get the address, phone, fax, editor, all of that. C is for county results, so what county you're in. These two are really important, their Facebook account and their Twitter account. And as Marianne's going to talk a little bit later, you're going to see why these are so important, because in building a relationships, we sort of have to do a little friendly stalking with the reporters as well as the outlets. And then the W is just for weather forecast. But here you can actually get into their home page and then get into their Facebook or Twitter accounts. If I go to Alameda Journal, for example, it's going to give me the paper itself. So this is going to help you start then looking at the different sections that they have. For example, here they have, I got a pop-up ad, so let me turn that off. So they've got business, they've got sports, local. So some of the things we're looking for is business and education section, workforce, reporters that cover sort of that beat. And that's what you'll do to start making a list. Radio is the same thing. I can come over here. In fact, Marianne's working on a media buy right now for the South Bay Consortium for their Open Doors campaign. And what's great about this is you can really go through and look at your areas and also the format that they have, whether it's news talk, Spanish, sometimes Asian. So that really helps you get into your target audience as well. Marianne, do you have anything to add on that while I'm toggling back to the screen here?
I know. I mean, it's a great one to find, particularly when you're looking for stations that you might not listen to. You'll generally probably know some of the major ones in your area, but if you're targeting a certain market, maybe Spanish radio or Chinese or Vietnamese, something like that, that's a good place to start with your search for your radio stations, and they can be really helpful. They're often really looking for news.
Right. In fact, in the South Bay, I was thinking about that campaign, even though that's paid media, not so much in the PR side, but there are PR opportunities when you start to build those relationships. You want to share one of those, Marianne? I think it was on the Spanish station that you worked with, that they have like a community arm to it.
Yes, that's a really good thing when you're talking about a major network like Univision or Telemundo on the Spanish side, and even on English radio, if it's a CBS station, they often have foundations, and they're specifically focused on really helping the community and be involved in the community. If anybody has any of those relationships, maybe you could put it in the chat button right now if you've developed relationships with one of the foundations for the media, because it's we've found a lot of opportunities that way for South Bay.
Right, we really have. And so part of this is, there's two sides of the house in an outlet, a media outlet. One is the news side, which is really what we're focusing on here today, the public relations kind of component to it. The other is paid advertising. Oftentimes in that paid advertising, if you just have a small amount of money even, and you have some seed money from media buys, you can often leverage that into all kinds of opportunities. But the two sides of the house are very different. Often advertising and sales and the news do not talk to each other. It's kind of like the separation of church and state, simply because news is all about what is newsworthy, right? But you have opportunities on both sides of the house. So this list here will really help you understand your local media landscape, and even just creating like a simple Excel spreadsheet with your contacts by newspaper, radio, TV, et cetera, even online. The other option you have here is to buy media services like a PR Newswire, where they keep their contacts up to speed. There you will have to get pay for your press release by the word, and so it can be a little bit costly and depending on your reach. So we always advise, especially in our world in public sector, to just, if you're going to build relationships with the news media, then know who they are and build that list yourself. Now, I mentioned this earlier about targeting the approach based on key topics. So, for example, back in that example of Alameda, I'd probably want to focus on the business section. And when you look at adult education, there's two lenses you want to look at in terms of building press releases and other maybe proactive articles or op-eds, which we'll get into. But you want to look at it from how does it affect the student, and then how does it affect employers? And we talked a lot about that in the business engagement webinar last week. So all of these words in that second bullet, education, jobs, workforce economy, and business, you have linkage to as an adult educator. So look for the reporters that are in that space as well, and then make sure, of course, in that spreadsheet you have, you acquire their phone and their email, and that can sometimes be in the contact or about us section. Now, once you build that list, then we want to do what's called friendly stalking, don't we, Marianne? And that's all about using social media on Twitter, LinkedIn, and the blog feed. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Marianne, to sort of walk us through, since you are the resident social media guru here.
Okay, great. How many of you, this isn't a poll, just if you feel like telling me us in the chat box if you've had connection with your press on social media, because it is very key and it makes the putting together a media list really helpful. Actually, Selena gave you a number of lists that you can work through and find out your local stations. But you can also, if you're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn, you can find your local news media there, and they're all on there. Now I'm going to talk specifically about social media and specifically about Twitter. And I want to walk you through exactly the process that you can go through to find your local media. So if you can switch over to the next slide, I can go ahead and walk through this. Okay, so the first step really is, if you have a Twitter account, and I'll tell you, the easiest thing to do is put it on your phone, because you could pick it up at odd periods of time to work on it. It doesn't all have to be done at once. In fact, we prefer you didn't do it all at once, because you want to you don't want to be following 500 people and have 3 people following you. So it's really better to spend maybe 15 minutes here and there initially to start getting your local news media connected to you. And you can do that just by starting with what you know, the stations that you know, the newspapers that you know, and start working through them. And as you start adding the actual news station, you'll start seeing, using the search button, you can see who the reporters are. You'll see the reporters will say, we're talking about Univision. You'll have, if you put Univision Radio Sacramento into the search button in Twitter, you will find a lot of the reporters who are who work for Univision in Sacramento will be on Twitter under their own personal accounts, and that's really where you want to get to, their own personal accounts. So when you start adding them, one of the things that is an important thing for you to remember is to always put your city name as a hashtag in your post initially, and put that in the search box, and that will bring up a lot of people in the community. There'll be nonprofits, there'll be a lot of reporters, and there'll be other businesses sometimes in the neighborhood as well. But you'll find a lot of that back and forth is between the reporters and entities in the community. So it's a good way to start. Many of you may not be on Twitter just because it's a lot of posting there. And the most important thing is not posting. The most important thing is retweeting and engaging. So even if you only post one thing a week on your Twitter account to start, that's fine. Spend the rest of the time looking to see what other reporters are doing. And then you can reach out to them by private message with an event you have coming up, with something that they might be interested, someone they might want to interview. And as well, as you look at their accounts, you'll get a feel for something that Selena mentioned a few slides ago about when you're sending out email press releases in that subject line. You really want to write a headline, and by watching how they word their tweets in their 140 characters, you'll get an idea of what's eye-catching. So it kind of helps on the other end, too. And when you do send out an email with a press release, you can reach out privately to reporters you've connected with on Twitter and say, hey, we have a press release out, will you look for it? And they might get back to you and say, yeah, can you just send it to me and put this in the subject line? So it's a good way to start making personal connections. You can also use.
So, Marianne,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you real quick, Marianne? You went through the hashtag component of it. So you're saying like hashtag Sacramento, hashtag San Diego. Is that what you're talking about, to include that? Can you go over that a little bit more?
Sure, I can do that. In fact, what you're seeing on your screen there, the picture that I have there, was my putting Palm Beach, where I'm based, in there with a hashtag. So the hashtag sign in the name of your town. And then what you see come up is you'll see anything with the name of your town in it, the top posters. And that is generally the media. So that's an easy way to start, is by putting that into the search bar on Twitter, the name of your town with a hashtag, or just even the name of your town will probably come up. And just start looking through all the people that come up. You'll click the people button there, which is the down from the blue bar, the third one from the left, and it will show you all the people who are the prolific posters on Twitter, and that's inevitably the media. And that can tell you who to reach out to. And you may see some names of people who you've worked with before, and we should definitely connect with them. But then you'll also see people, reporters from a lot of the different media outlets in your town, as well as bloggers, community event posters. There's always a lot of people around there. And as you just start working your way through connecting with them, engaging with them, retweet other people's stories. Anything that you don't always have to tweet about adult education. On our one of the things is we'll be starting up our Twitter channel for us, and we'll be actually using a lot of talking about skills gap, because that's very relevant. It's not specifically adult education, but we address that. We'll talk about different things that might be relevant, apprenticeships, even news releases of some of the things that are happening in Washington around this. So a lot of these types of things that are not exactly adult education but are ancillary topics, it's good to get involved and engage and retweet those types of things as well, because that starts broadening your audience.
And isn't that the whole idea here, is we're really trying to build relationships with the reporters? So getting interested in what they follow, and also looking at an angle, based on their stories and posts, then it's like, hey, we've got something here of interest that you're interested in. And so it really expands kind of your circle of influence.
Yes, yes. And you'll find that you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to say. A lot of times, as I said, just engaging, retweeting, clicking the like button on something, it raises your visibility because they see that you're doing that, and it raises your visibility with the reporters, and that's really what you're looking for. And you'll start to find that they will reach out to you as well, particularly if you're talking about a lot of things beyond just adult education, because you don't want them to put you in that part of their brain that says, these are the stories that I'm writing about adult education. You want them to be able to reach out for you for anything that is ancillary, so that they could add an adult education angle. And so that becomes important, because you become somebody they can come to for a story when they have a slow news day, or they need to round out another report that they're doing. Say that they're bringing, say that there's a business bringing 1,000 jobs to your area, or 100 jobs to your area. That actually relates to adult education, because they need trained workers. So that might be something where if you see that's happening, you might reach out to a reporter that you found on Twitter and say, hey, we have a good way, if you're writing on this, this is a good angle. We can tell you how we train people to help fill those types of positions. So that's really...
That's outstanding.
Okay, so I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I was just saying that's outstanding, Marianne. Just these little strategies and that you're bringing to the table are fantastic to expand their reach.
Okay. So that's how give you a starting point on social media.
And then didn't you have a note here about reaching out by private message with story ideas? You want to share a little bit about that, Marianne?
Sure. It's when you start making connections, or even if you're looking at the paper or reading something online and you see a name of somebody and you can find it, you can put that name into Twitter. Say you find a local reporter who's written something that you saw in the paper or on a blog post. Just drop it into Twitter. You can find them and you can reach out. There is a private message function on your Twitter account where you can send something out to them, and they can make an immediate conversation. You can have an immediate conversation on Twitter with them. But again, the first step is really just following them and then retweeting things that they say or commenting on things that they've posted.
You know, it's interesting, Marianne. We had a situation this week, and we were looking at, just who's out there doing a Google search and looking at op-eds and things like that. And one of a state legislator had posted some things about apprenticeship in Colorado, and hey, shouldn't we be doing things like that? So we're started to follow that person and also say, hey, there's a lot going on in California. Have you heard of this, this, and this? Would love to connect. So this strategy also applies to your legislators as well, and I know you're going to go a little bit deeper on this in the social media webinar in a couple of weeks, but everything we're sharing here can be really across all of your target audiences. Okay, fantastic. So if you have any questions on social media and connecting with the reporters, go ahead and put them in the chat feature, and then we'll keep moving forward here. So we've talked a lot about the psyche of reporters and these outlets in general and how to build your list and connect with them and who you should connect with. Now let's talk about the tools and the mediums that you can use to communicate. And there are really three. There are press releases, op-eds or columns, as we call them, special stories, articles, and then thirdly is a media advisory. So we're going to go over those three here and then share some of the items in your toolkit as well. Let's start by talking about just in general, what are the components of a good story? As you can tell from Marianne's section of the presentation, you're always sort of hunting out there and keeping your pulse as to what is happening in your local communities and, of course, our state as well, just in terms of broadly workforce, education, economic development, business, all of those things that we talked about previously. What is in the news? What is timely, important, and interesting? Because you want to make sure your story has an angle that ties into something that is happening. Qualifiers. Qualifiers are, you have to think through and say, okay, I'm going to put this story out to the media. Do they need to know it? Must they know? Should they know? Will they want to know? Will they be interested to know? And why? So you kind of have to think through instead of just starting to write, just think through everything that's going on and look at, why is my story fit in this whole realm. Topics that have an emotional appeal are pitchable, and I think this is where, as adult educators, you really have a great in, and it's why we ask you all to post adult learner stories on the website, because you can take those stories and it really has very much a human interest appeal to it. And we'll break that down for you in a press release template and show you how that works. And then making the information localized is important. So these are all the things you want to think about as you are building a good story. Now, let's talk about the press release for a moment. Here, just a couple of things. You want to communicate the information, very clear, logical format. You have a lead opening sentence and paragraph that should have facts and contain, about 40 words or less. And then, of course, the 5 W's and the 1 H. So what I'm going to do is go back now to some of your toolkits. And let me just get there here. Okay. Let me go to the press release template. All right. So as you download this, let me just share with you how you'd want to put this together. First of all, we've given you a press release heading, of course. You can use this, or you can just put your organization's logo on it. But every one of us, every one of the 71 consortia can use this press release to announce your participation in the Educate and Elevate California campaign. So generally what it has is you've got this section here, and this is generally done in an Arial font, 11 points. I know that's getting down into the weeds, but if you stick with this format, it's an editable template where you put your date, contact information, and then here you'd have your organization's name, just announcing that you're joining the campaign, which is about raising awareness about adult education. Here you put the city, state, again, your organization, and then we give you an opening sentence about why you're joining the campaign to show how important investments are in California's future. And that adult education's focus on preparing adults to successfully reach their educational goals and or enter the workforce. Now, this whole paragraph here came from an infographic that we put together, which I'll share with you as well. It's also a great thing to share with the media, is an infographic. And this sets up the business case for support as to why adult education is important in our state. And so we've pulled together national data about jobs requiring an education beyond high school. And then yet in California, 18% of those 25 years or older don't have a high school diploma or equivalent. And then we've given unemployment rate, poverty rates, things of that nature, all as what is happening as a result of folks that do not or need adult education. So this really sets it up in the beginning for you. And then it goes on in the next paragraph to talk about the campaign. What does the campaign represent? Well, it represents California K-12 and community college adult educators. It talks about how we work synergistically with our partners in the community through our state's AEBG grant, and that what we do in the consortia is to prepare students for life, work, and to support their families and strengthen their communities, no matter where they are in their educational journey. By the way, you'll see that statement on the website. That's kind of like our mission statement that we have developed with all the partners here. Now, here is where you start drilling into tailoring the press release for your local area and your region. So in this paragraph, you want to get some kind of quote from your adult education leader, whether that's your executive director or whoever is in your organization that generally you want a higher level person to do the quote. We've just given you an example here, but obviously you can change it to whatever you want. Again, this is a template, and we're just saying that our regional consortia transition the students to post-secondary education, jobs, and better career paths, all driven by collaboration to move students out of poverty. That's just an example. You could say anything you want. Maybe what we've been working on recently, and Mary Ann's been the lead on that, is developing different profiles or profiles of each of the regional consortia. And as part of that, everybody has submitted an innovation. So this will be a great, these two paragraphs here to introduce your innovation that you've turned in on those regional profiles. And if you're not aware of that, see your regional your consortia chair, because we've been in contact with everybody about these profiles. So maybe here you want to talk about that innovation. Here in the next paragraph is where you put the results of your innovation, maybe the number of people you've served, or however you want to, whatever the results of the innovation. You can also use that human element story here. One of those adult learners in our community is so-and-so, and then you tell the person's story, their name, their age, their background, what classes they took, what happened, what issues did the classes solve, all of that. So really this whole section here is for you to tailor it, talk about an innovation or a success story. And then it ends with the Educate and Elevate campaign, what we're trying to do with it, and go to the website, which will be live on Monday. And then if you have a byline is something that talks about your organization and your mission. And if you have one, you would apply it there. Okay. Back to the screen here. So again, what we've tried to do here is just give you very simple plug-and-play information. Oh, and let me go back. I neglected to show you one thing here. So bear with me while I get back to this. Okay. Get back here. I wanted to show you one other thing on this, and that is the infographics that we've developed, because I think they're really cool looking, and they give some really good data points that you can pull and put in your press release depending on how you want to tailor it. So here we've covered everything from unemployment rates for individuals with less than a high school degree or diploma, all the way to those that have some college or associate degree. There's 3 pages of infographics. We also come in here and talk about immigrants, that we have the highest proportion of immigrants of any state, making up 27% of the population. And then we sort of get into the economic development side of the house and say California leads the nation with over 784,000 immigrant entrepreneurs, and that what they contribute in terms of our economy. So we're really, again, trying to build the business case for support for all the work that we do. And of course, it's got the Educate and Elevate website as well. So these are fantastic. You can take these and actually put them on your own website, use them as press releases, or anything that you want to use them for. Okay. Now we'll get back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So those are some of the tools, and again, that's a press release. Every one of you can certainly use that and tailor it. Now, this slide here, this is about leveraging the campaign, and the link that you see here on the slide takes you to the AEBG kind of showcase, if you will, and this is where you submit your success stories. This is really important because we have a section on the website that shows all of the success stories and innovations taking place. So this is really a great tool. We encourage all of you to input your success stories, especially between now and the end of October, because that's when we're going to look at doing a coordinated push out all together with our press releases, as well as going out and talking to key influencers. So any questions on press releases, certainly put them in the chat pod. And then we're going to talk a little bit about op-eds. And these, I will tell you, this is an opinion piece, and basically it's between 750 and 800 words. It has very much a clear, defined point of view. And they're getting more and more difficult to place just because of everything that's happening politically in the world today, and so they're becoming a little bit more difficult. But if you can get one place, it really speaks to the opinions of your organization around adult education. Now, here's an example that we've given, and this was by Eloy Oakley from the community colleges, and Alan Zarenberg, who's the president and CEO of the California Chamber. And in this particular op-ed, they talked about how millions of Americans find themselves disconnected from the economy. And even in California, workers are worried that they don't have the skills to land or to keep good paying jobs. So it goes into the whole thing about how career education, apprenticeship, all of these different tools that we use every day, right, as educators, are great examples of helping workers and potential workers move forward. So anyway, I just want to share this with you as an example. Again, these are a little bit harder to place. The Chancellor's Office churns these out quite a bit, but you can look at the format of that particular one. And then the last piece is the media advisory. Another strategy you could take with this campaign is to set up maybe an open house or a special event to invite the media and any kind of key influencers, your local electeds, to stop by your organization and see adult education in action. So if you're doing a special event, you don't want to use a press release. You would use a media advisory, and there's one in your kit, and it's just an invite for the media to attend the event. It certainly has a who, what, when, where, and the why is going to take the data points from that infographic and put it right in the why section, and then have something about, you know, our adult education programs are a valuable asset in the community, and this is an opportunity for the community to get a great view of what's happening. And then with that, when the press come to your event, you want to give them a media kit. It can be a little folder where maybe you do put a post-event press release in there about the event and what happened, the media advisory itself, maybe your organizational brochure, the infographic sheet that we provided. That would be great as well. Marianne, I was just thinking about, we did the national webinar on how to run a special event. Is there anything you want to share about that? I know we haven't really rehearsed this, but I was trying to think back. We had some really some good folks that had a really great event, so I was just trying to recall them around adult education.
Yeah, I know that some of the things that I was just thinking about was the fact that in that media advisory that you include the angle that they might find it interesting to be able to come to. Why would they want to come to the event? So it's really from a press angle that you're talking about it. So that was one of the things that sounded important. And also, it was the events that were really targeted to be something that the press would like. I know that one one school in Arizona had everyone had their students in one of their technology classes have a little film. They had a little film festival as one of their events, and so that was pretty newsworthy. And then I know in another one they had an international day where everyone brought in food. So a lot of it was about really thinking about how to make the event newsworthy. And you can do that with a lot of your events, even just by who you have as a speaker or how you arrange around it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Marianne. And I also think when you have an event, what do you have visually? You know, maybe there's some classes that are very visual, hands-on, things of that nature, and so you can really sort of tune into that and set a little agenda. You can also have speakers like your local elected officials to stand up and say a few words. Maybe there's some employers that you've worked with that have really done some fantastic work for your school, like giving your students work-based learning opportunities and jobs, and you want to recognize them. That would also be another thing you could add in as a special event. So they're really, you know, when you look at this and your options for working with the media, obviously, as we back up and look, you've got to understand their psyche. You've got to understand where you connect with them. And again, that can be on social media especially, and just sort of friendly stalking them so you can build these lists. And then when you have really three ways that you could communicate with them. One is through a press release, and obviously that's going to be something you all want to do for this campaign, a media advisory, which is if you're going to host a special event, and then the third would be either an op-ed or a special article to get placed. Now, I had a question about the dates again. Just take a little pause here and let you know that the dates are going to be, we're going to launch the first phase of the website, and I'm actually going to go to the test site right now so you guys can see that. So let me kind of pull that up, and then we'll take a look at this. Okay, right now this is the test site that you're looking at right now. It has a video, aspirational video of our students getting into different jobs and occupations and thriving, all of that. The first phase of this website, let me just show you a little bit what we've done here. We have our mission. We have Meet the AEBG Consortia. We have our latest e-magazine. Their adult education facts, which I'll share with you. Our video should be up probably in a couple of weeks. And then we have success stories, regional innovations, and then contact us, and of course our Twitter account, which you will all follow at AEBG. So I don't know, Marian, is that the handle? We need to double check that.
Yeah, I think we'll have to double check that. I think that that's what it's going to be.
Okay, we have to double check. Right, because you're looking at a kind of a test server. So this will be launched on Monday. I want to also just go to this page right here to show you other tools that you might want to use. And on this one of the things that we've realized is that folks in the community don't really understand what adult education encompasses. There are so many facets of adult education. So what are they? And you guys know because you're in the consortia where it can be adult basic secondary, it can be career technical education, English as a second language. You've seen all these before, but what we've done is we've created fact sheets about each one, about what they are, and then we've included some highlights and data points on each of these fact sheets. So you can certainly pull these down and use them either on your website or with the media. These would be really great for part of a media kit, if you will. So this website is going to launch on Monday. Let me show you one other thing here. And here's the infographics right here. So you see the full infographic. That'll link you to what we just shared. The other thing, we have quotes. And let me just go here really quickly to the success stories. And here you'll see all the success stories that you all have submitted. Again, these can be retooled and put in your press release, or these folks could even come to a special event if you're going to host one. So again, this launches on Monday. Now, during the month of October, what are we going to work on? We're going to work on a second phase to add to this website. Right now, when we go into Meet the Consortia, you'll see the map, and you've seen this map before of the directory of all the consortia. Generally, what's going to happen in phase 2, if I click on a link, I'm going to get a regional profile of each of the consortia. And Marianne, do you want to talk about sort of what's in that profile since you're leading these efforts?
Yes, the profiles are set up to be a story. And we've given a little introduction to the region so that there's a little bit of an overview of it. Sometimes the geography or interesting something about the area. And then we go into the regional economics, what kind of jobs are coming there, what kind of jobs have left there, so that the reader can get a view of what's driving the economy and what kind of workers are going to be needed going forward in that area. And then we also talk about, then the third part we talk about is the regional labor force. How many people we have in the labor force, what is their background, what is their income sometimes, or we'll talk about the racial and ethnic breakup, or we'll talk about the number of English language learners, high school graduates. We try to make it, though, the whole idea behind it is we try to make it a compelling story. Because when you make it a compelling story, it's something that a legislator or anyone or someone who's interested, or the press, really has some evocative imagery, really, is what we're trying to get. They have that in their mind, and so that sticks better than just dry statistics. So that's what you'll see in there is really the kind of storytelling. We have a number of charts and graphs as well. Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you think about the regional profiles plus the infographics plus your success stories, I mean, you have all the makings to pitch an article or send out a press release to the media. It's all there for you. It really is. So the way this will roll out, so those regional profiles will be done the end of October. that happens to coincide with when the updated legislative report is due. It's an interim report that's going to be out to the legislators. Marianne during this time is going to be building our social media account and following some of the legislators and key influencers. And then in November, and we'll send another reminder out to all of you, is when we like to have a big sort of push, if you will, with press releases in the media and things of that nature. So that gives you a general timeline. Obviously, you have to do what's best for your organization, but we're looking to do a concerted effort because, again, the more stories hitting the media, the more press releases going out there at a concerted effort, that's going to get the attention of key influencers and say, wow, there probably is a lot to this adult education thing. I better take a closer look. So that's sort of the overall game plan. And, of course, we have a newsletter or a section in the AEBG newsletter that goes out every week. And so we'll be keeping you posted on all of these dates and new tools and things of that nature as they come about. So let's see, we talked about the infographic. I showed you those. Let's talk about kind of your calls to action just based on the materials that we presented today. First is you want to develop your media contact list, and certainly using the PowerPoint and the links and all the strategies here today, you can do that. You want to submit your success stories and innovations at the link provided here on the screen. That's going to do two things. It's going to help you build your press release from the human interest story, or also if it's an innovation, the relevancy angle of your organization. And secondly, it's going to get you promoted on our campaign website, because everything you post up there we review and edit, and then it goes directly to the campaign website. And remember, all eyes are going to be on the website as we move forward with our outreach efforts. Again, you can leverage those human interest stories or your innovation, plus the campaign press release template that we shared with you today to announce your participation in the campaign. Every one of us can do that. That is such a simple thing to tailor that press release, and we recommend that time frame in early November, but we will be also sending you out reminders. So that sort of gives you your next calls to action and a little bit of the timeline. So as I'm putting up the next webinar series, I'm just, if you have any questions on the materials, go ahead and put it in the chat feature. And while you're doing that, wanted to let you know that Marianne's going to be taking the lead on our next webinar, which is Harnessing the Power of Social Media for Advancing Adult Education. Obviously, we just hit the tip of the iceberg here today, focusing on building relationships with reporters and news outlets. But that, if you can save the date, that'll be October 26th at noon. And then our last one, and this again will coincide with all our efforts as our press releases are going out, is working with key influencers to build support. So we have a communications committee right now that's meeting between adult educators, either community colleges and K through 12, that are coming together to say how might we go out in early November and really work with our legislators to help them understand the value and importance of adult education. So you have a lot of great materials coming up and that you can mark your calendar for. As always, our friends at SCOE just do an outstanding job, and they have created a contact support form on the website at this link. So if you have any questions about the webinar or any questions in general, please use that form, because it will really help get to the right subject matter expert to help you through. And I don't see any questions, so I hope you found some great information off of today's webinar. I want to thank my colleague, Marianne Conlin, as always, for all your great work. And I'll turn it back over to Veronica to close out.
All right. Thank you, Selena, and thank you for today's presentation. Everyone, thank you for joining today. Immediately following this presentation, you will receive a pop-up window with our webinar on today's presentation. Please fill it out. It is our way of evaluating this particular webinar, as well as addressing any technical assistance or professional development needs that you may have. So please feel free to fill out that webinar. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.